welcome to your Wednesday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast. Make sure you follow, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe wherever you find your podcast, because that's where you're going to find us. The audio versions anywhere. Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. Make sure you check us out there. Also, make sure you're tuned into SportsWire Radio. It is the exclusive audio partner of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Speaking of partners, bodyslam.net. If you're not subscribed to their YouTube channel yet, please do, because that's where you will see our smiling faces each and every week. And all of our past episodes, video versions, are available exclusively at bodyslam.net. Make sure you check that out. Once again, my name is Chris Belcher, and joining me, as always, is the indie darling, the young buck, Mr. Andy York. What's happening, man? How are you?
Not much, man. I'm doing good. Just apparently a crazy week of wrestling once again. I'm trying to jump through everything, and got the new season premieres of Raw and SmackDown and everything else.
I mean, we have talked about this for such a long time now, man, and it continues to ring true. The return of the fans, and I really feel like in all companies, creatively holding back until the fans come back. You know, it just, to me, it just proves that not just WWE, even though they've been criticized for it, but WWE, AEW, they know, and all these other, New Japan, the Ring of Honor, yada, 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 they know how to get a reaction out of the crowd, and they know how to listen to that reaction. I mean, they might not get it right every time, but man, maybe it's just because we were missing what we have now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's nice just to have raw reaction again. No pun intended, but sure. It's nice to have raw reaction again to things that are like happening, not piped in noise or wrestlers around the ring that have probably been told what to do during certain things. So it's nice to have like genuine reaction again from fans, and it's definitely playing up and playing into it. And there's just a lot of fun stuff that is happening, a lot of questionable stuff and stuff that I'm sure we're going to jump into, but for the most part, a lot of fun stuff happening.
Hey, but that is the world that we live in of professional wrestling, the good and the bad, the Vince Russo, as we like to say. If you missed last Monday's episode where we talked all about the history of WCW's Halloween Havoc, do yourself a favor, go back and check that out, especially if you are an old school wrestling fan. We're calling it Old School 101. Andy took the helm of that episode and quizzed me a little bit on some old school WCW stuff. We had a blast doing that. We're going to be doing a lot more of that coming up on this season, the third season of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We've also got some exclusive interviews coming up that we're going to get to at the end of the show. We'll tell you more about that. But right here on the Wednesday edition, we like to talk all current product stuff, the ins and outs of the world of professional wrestling, what's going on in the news. We need to start with some of the biggest news over the last week in the world of professional wrestling, and that is outside the WWE. And let me just say right off the bat that I'm going to preface this by saying that you guys have listened to this podcast and you know how much I can't stand AEW's commentary. I make no bones about hiding it. I can't stand it. I just can't. And one of the reasons is JR. I just don't think it's a good combination with what he likes in wrestling and what AEW does. But that's neither here nor there. I want to say that obviously just because I don't like his commentary, at least right now, I would never personally attack him. So for all of you who think I don't like JR, like that's not true. I just don't like his commentary. There are some things that I question, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, JR announced on social media this week that he has skin cancer, and treatment is they're looking at different options. He obviously is working towards getting healed up and everything. So thoughts and prayers certainly with JR in this diagnosis, him and his family.
Absolutely. Yeah. I saw that, and it's, he's a fighter. He's been a fighter his whole life. He's gone through a lot of very difficult circumstances over the years, and it's kind of going back and forth of this, but like obviously we are two Kentucky homegrown boys, so that means we love our college basketball. And this week or last week, Dick Vitale announced that he had cancer as well.
Sure.
And so these are like two greats in their sport that can sometimes annoy me because my grandfather used to mute the TV every time Dick Vitale came on to call a Kentucky basketball game. But like they're two outstanding guys. JR is an outstanding man. He always has been. He's been put in some tough situations at times, but
sure,
just thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family, and AEW's family as well, dealing with it. I'm sure that they're supporting him in every way that they can, and so just hoping that he can recover and that things go well.
Absolutely. So that being said, let's AEW did a different schedule for the second week in a row, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So Friday night was Rampage. The biggest thing, obviously, out of Rampage is the rematch between Pack and Andrade. Man, just can't say enough about the match, obviously. But what I want to talk about really is the post-match. Mm-hmm. Like you have Malachi Black coming out to help Andrade, and then you have Cody coming out to make the save. Do you read any more into that other than just trying to build that matchup for Dynamite the next night? Or do you think there's something with Malachi and Andrade? Because we saw the flip-flop next night on Dynamite.
I think you probably are seeing the builds to their next feuds. I think probably the next we'll more than likely see Malachi Black versus Pac start to build, which that would be – those matches are going to be absolutely amazing. And then you've got Cody and Andrade, which is something different and new, and is, if booked right, can definitely get Andrade over even more as a top star in AEW. So I think that's more than likely where it's going. Plus, to add some hype to the Dynamite match, which we will talk about here in a little bit. But I don't read into it any more than that. Probably just booking their feud, setting up something different to go down the line as we head into Full Gear.
I gotcha. Man, it'll be interesting. You talk about putting Andrade over. As we saw with this Malachi Black feud, eventually Cody's going to get one.
Yeah.
So when Cody now gets one on Andrade, woo, buddy, the boos will continue to rain.
I'm fine with it as long as we're
fine with it.
As long as we're building to a Cody turn. I think if we're building to a Cody turn, I think it adds. I think a Cody turn, and it's kind of like it could kind of be like what Cena was during his massive run of like he was kind of the biggest heel in the company without even his character didn't even know he was a heel. And I think that could be with Cody, if Cody being this egotistical, narcissistic guy that doesn't think he's a bad guy, but everyone else knows he's a bad guy. And I think that would be a very interesting way for his character to go. Because we've talked about it before of how we both think Cody kind of needs a character change or something, a different thing about him.
Yep.
And so I think these could take the steps to it. But yeah, I definitely think Andrade, kind of like Malachi Black, won the feud kind of overall. I definitely think Cody's going to get his win no matter what.
Well, and to me, that's fine because, like you said, it's okay. And I don't think it's necessarily just if we're headed towards a turn. I think regardless of his office status or whatever, he's one of the biggest stars in the company. He's one of the big reasons why AEW is where he is. Guess what? He's not going to lose every match, guys.
No, I don't think he definitely shouldn't lose every match.
No.
I think my thing is that they've had him win at times when it seemed to have stifled or stopped someone else's momentum. That has not happened with Malachi Black. Malachi Black has looked strong throughout this entire feud. And I think that could obviously happen with Andrade as well, as long as they kind of do something different and fresh there. But yeah, if beating Cody should be a special thing.
Sure.
Like when Malachi Black squashed Cody in that first match, that was a big deal, and it should have been, just like when Darby Allin went to a time limit draw with him. Like that was a big deal. So beating Cody should be a big deal. It's just how they book things, I think, should happen. Plus, having matches like every other Dynamite with him in a feud with somebody, you can kind of start to see. I think that's why this Malachi thing has been so nice, is it's been spread out.
Yep.
It's had enough time to breathe and developments in the story and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I totally get that. And to your point, like if Cody doesn't get a win back, then beating Cody doesn't mean as much anymore.
Yeah.
You know, if Malachi's just going to go beat him 3 straight times, then how much stock is going to be in Andrade if he comes in and beats him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Cody's got to get his win back somewhere.
Yeah.
But what a match between Cody and Malachi. The table spot, the crossroads through the table, Cody doing the huge springboard cutter where he went to the top rope was insane. Just a wild and crazy match, man. It really was. I mean, all 3 matches, I can't say this one was the best of the 3 because I feel like they all 3 had different meanings. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think my favorite one is the first one, just because of like the shock factor of everything that happened with it. So I think that's definitely like my favorite match. But I think quality wise, I think either the last one, the one that happened, did it happen right after All Out?
Yeah, because it didn't happen. So. It didn't happen at All Out.
Yeah, I think it happened like right after All Out. That was a really, really. I think that was one of my favorite matches, and this match was really strong as well. And credit to both guys for being busted open and bleeding. That definitely added to it. And yeah, I think it was just. I think both guys that we've kind of come to this conclusion. Both guys need to go their own separate way for a while, and definitely start something new.
It was definitely kudos to AEW, and I don't do this very often, but kudos. I'm not as much of a hater as I used to be, but kudos to AEW for telling a compelling, fantastic story on television.
Yeah,
and not having to use a pay-per-view to blow it off. I'm not saying WWE can't do that, because obviously they can. AEW just proved that it can be done and be done well.
The thing I'll say about AEW is they have some programming that you can't miss, because you're going to miss these like some of these finishing matches. Whereas like on Monday Night Raw, you could very easily, we just saw the season debut, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, I'm sure, but we just saw the season debut of Raw, and we've already had rematches that we've seen the last few weeks. Sure. So like Monday Night Raw necessarily you can miss and not really miss anything. AEW, you've got to kind of consistently watch it to keep up with, you know, the storyline developments that have been going on. And I think that's very interesting. That's the way they're keeping their viewership up, is each episode is must-see TV.
Sure. They make them all feel important. Yeah. Exactly what I've said about their big 4 pay-per-views. They make them all feel important. Yeah. And one of the ways that they continue to do that is having not only matches with Cody and Malachi. Again, high-profile matches are the key to some of these AEW shows, and you can say that for Bryan Danielson versus Dustin Rhodes. Just a match that we are really. I don't know if we saw it in Bryan's WWE run or not against Goldust. I don't know. Again, as everybody well knows, I really miss Daniel Bryan's big run. But seeing these two go at it in AEW, man, with the right opponent, Dustin Rhodes has still got it.
Yeah, and like there's obviously a massive difference between Goldust and Dustin Rhodes, and we've learned that from his jump into AEW. So we haven't seen anything like this. And you know, this is one of those matches when they announced it, I was like, oh, this is like it'll be fun. Like obviously Daniel, like he's going to go over. Dustin's going to lose, but it was a really great match. Dustin shocks me sometimes, like you said, of like how good he still is actually.
Sure.
And so it was very surprising to watch that. So that was a really, really great match.
The other thing that was very surprising to watch and very surprising to continue to watch, we've talked about this several times on the show, is MJF and his promos, man. Good grief. Like I'm not, let me be careful how I say this.
Yeah.
Where's the line? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I love the fact that we don't know where the line is with MJF. That makes
not even with MJF. I'm talking like AEW and TNT and all that. Like, how much are you going to let this guy get away with?
And I think that's part of like who he is. And I think that's so like that's one of the fun things about him is when he grabs a mic, you never know what he's going to say. And like that's kind of how, like, not necessarily to the same degree, that's how Punk was like in his big run. When he grabbed the mic, you never knew what he was going to say. And so obviously I think AEW is going to give him more freedom than probably Punk got in WWE, but Punk kind of said whatever he wanted to say and was like, "Find me" afterwards. He didn't really care.
Right.
But I think with MJF, it's like the way he does it. If anybody else did it, it would be blown up and taken way out of proportion. I think not necessarily way out of proportion, but it would be detrimental to probably that person's career.
Sure.
The fact that it's MJF and he's built this rapport with people, it just fits with his character. I think my favorite interview I've seen, not plugging out other podcasts or anything, but wrestling with Brendan from Barstool Sports. He did an interview with MJF actually last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, and definitely go check it out because what's really cool is you don't know where the character begins and you don't know where it ends with like the real life person, and that's part of this whole story. So I think his promos they're captivating and interesting, and you never know what he's going to say. And when he says some stuff, it makes you cringe, and that's kind of part of it, I think. So I definitely don't know if there's a line, and I don't know if TNT really like cares that much of what he says because they see how well he does with viewership and everything. So I don't know if they care as much, but they're making a point where they like, okay, we got to calm it down a little bit.
Right. See, that's what I think too. I mean, at the end of the day, TNT is a public company, and they're, all that kind of stuff, standards and practices, and yada yada yada. But man, hide your wives, hide your children. Don't let them listen to MJF. Good grief. Yeah. Talking about Lex Luger in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Well, my goodness. Wow.
The Pillman promo was probably
that was the worst. That one was
the worst, but the most interesting.
And that was really that was the one that really set this whole thing off.
Yeah.
I mean, he was cutting edgy promos, don't get me wrong, but we didn't know edgy until we got to Cincinnati and he started talking about Pillman.
And then the one he cut right after that was both of them were crazy.
One last thing about Dynamite before we move on. Dynamite on the Jericho Cruise again. Why did we not see that? Because that was this weekend as well, especially because they did it on a Saturday night. Wonder why they didn't do that.
Yeah, I don't know, unless they already had like previous bookings that they had to fulfill since they started traveling back. So like previous fulfillments through the pandemic that got pushed back to certain dates. I don't know if they
I guess that makes sense.
I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed it when it was on the boat because it was definitely a different atmosphere and it was a lot of fun. But I wonder if like with Jericho doing his own cruise and bringing in some other people from outside of some of these other even companies that they work with, I wonder if they just thought it would be better to keep everybody, keep a central show somewhere else. Plus, there's still a lot of restrictions and things in some places. So it's probably easier to get more people in to the arena than on the cruise ship. And there's probably just a lot of logistics stuff that went into it this year.
Well, Jericho announced his 4th cruise that's coming up in March, so it's really coming up really quick. I hope they go back. Man, I love that cruise atmosphere. Like you said, that's where we got the debut of the Judas sing-along. So, like, I want to see that, and the reason I want to see that is because it's different. Yep. It's something totally, not saying that WWE wouldn't take a chance and do something like that, but, man, that's just another stamp of AEW doing something different to set themselves apart.
Right.
So I would use that platform. That's just my opinion. Speaking of my opinion, if you're enjoying my opinion, this is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Make sure you throw us a follow at PBW Podcast wherever, whatever social media platform you want. We're on them all. I am at Chris Belcher 24. My co-host, Mr. Andy York, is at Andy_PBWP. And we are hanging out with you talking all things wrestling. If you like the new stuff, if you like the old stuff, if you like anything and everything in between, this is the show for you. We drop brand new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel and on SportsWire Radio. And if those aren't good enough for you, and you just want your traditional audio on-demand podcast, guess what? We're available wherever you find your podcast too. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us some feedback. This show is for the fans, by the fans. We just want to talk about what you want to hear about, guys. So make sure that you give us some feedback. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. We just talked about AEW. Let's talk about WWE as we get ready to wind down here. Always got to talk about the big people up in New York, the big territory, the big house, as I like to call it. But man, the big house is coming down south because the breaking news from this week, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, SummerSlam is coming to our backyard in 2022. Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee will be hosting SummerSlam. Man, if we can't get Rumble or Mania because we're not an indoor stadium, this is the absolute next best thing. I am stoked, dude.
Yeah, you sent me because I hadn't seen it yet, and you sent me the article from Nissan Stadium saying that that SummerSlam was coming to Nashville, and I was like, is this is this one of those fake Twitter accounts? Is this something else? So I went and looked at WWE's release, and I was like, oh, they're actually coming to Nashville, because I think the previous rumor was that they were more than likely heading to
London,
England or London.
London.
Yeah, they're heading to London.
It's the whatever anniversary.
29th, I think 29th, 30th, maybe
30. I think it's 30th of whatever SummerSlam was over there. 92 was over there.
Yeah. So I was fully expecting that. We had been talking recently, like, we don't get any pay-per-views in Nashville. We don't get any love here in Nashville. I've been tweeting Tony Khan for like a month, asking him when he's going to come to Nashville with AEW. And we're getting SummerSlam, and I was thoroughly shocked by it, and I am ready for it. Obviously, we will be in attendance. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not missing that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm just hoping that, it's a good show. I'm just hoping it's a good show. But either way or not, it's a different atmosphere, and it's a big show, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, and not only that, man, we've seen, for those of you who aren't familiar with what Nashville has hosted recently, let me just tell you, the NHL All-Star Game was one of the first things. Haven't we had the Women's College Final Four? Has that been here? That's right.
We had the NFL Draft.
NFL Draft being the biggest thing that we've held recently. The SEC tournament's been here countless times. It's supposed to be here for the majority of the next 15
I think
years.
Next 5 years in a row it's here, and then it's somewhere else, and then they come back for 5 years.
Exactly. So that being said, Nashville is not unfamiliar with hosting big things. So guess what? Nashville is going to do this thing up. Nashville is going to bring it. And regardless, the card, obviously we want it to be great, but this whole experience, Nashville is going to make it a big deal, man. It's going to be great.
And if they're smart, they're going to have Derrick Henry come out and stiff arm somebody in the middle of the ring, because that would be absolutely perfect if that happened.
Derrick Henry is making some sort of appearance.
Yeah, either him or Taylor the One. One of those two guys are definitely.
Oh yeah,
or both.
Probably both.
Yeah.
Mike.
But
could you imagine? Just picture this: the Viking Raiders versus Taylor the One and Derrick Henry.
See, I was thinking the Viking Raiders with Taylor the One in their corner, because he would be a Viking. He's definitely a Viking.
That's true. Okay,
guy.
Good. Yeah, that's a good call.
So I think that would be a lot of fun. You could have Derrick Henry and Big E doing something just face to face. That would be absolutely amazing. Anything like that. But what's really cool is there are so many small venues as well around the Nashville area that there's going to be a lot of high quality independent pro wrestling stuff happening the week of SummerSlam as well. That is more than likely going to be really, really fun to watch.
You've got Municipal Auditorium, you've got Bridgestone,
you've got what NXT used to do. They used to do it at War Memorial.
Part of TPAC, War Memorial.
Yeah,
I think the Basement East has hosted some wrestling stuff, so that wouldn't surprise me seeing an indie show there.
See, what they need to do is have Dynamite on Wednesday and Bridgestone, and then you have the rest of it kind of come on, which makes me wonder: will SmackDown be in Bridgestone?
Friday? when they did SmackDown before SummerSlam in Vegas, they did it in Arizona. So I don't know if it'll be in Bridgestone, but
they're doing Memphis or Atlanta or something.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, not too far out of the realm of possibilities. Also, my news source in this, the place that I first saw this article about SummerSlam Nashville. I know we're going off on a really big tangent on this, but we live right near Nashville. This is huge news for us. I feel like we really have to talk about it. And it's the first time in history, really, that WWE has announced the majority of their pay-per-view card a year in advance, locations and all that.
is brilliant. It's smart to do it that way. Don't wait.
Sure is.
Just tell people that you're coming to their shows.
Yep.
And when they are. I think the only two that were left up in the air was in February and October, and those are more than likely going to be Saudi shows.
Yep, at least one of them.
Which putting a Saudi show in between the Rumble and Mania makes me a little nervous. But other than that, the card, like the pay-per-view month looked really interesting to me, leading throughout the year. So
you've got Money in the Bank at the beginning of July, and then you've got SummerSlam. It's not in August; it's at the end of July.
Yeah.
So that's
on a Saturday, and most of their pay-per-views on a Saturday.
Two stadium shows in the same month. Yeah. So that's really interesting to me. But what I was going to say was, my news source where I first saw this was one of the new local toy stores that I'm become friends with the owner. It's called Music City Toys and Collectibles. He posted it because he said they're going to do a big signing that weekend.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to be cool to see, not only because I'm sure WWE is going to do some sort of like access or some kind of thing at the Music City Center that's going to get utilized, but it's going to be interesting to see what toy stores or what indie promotions or swap meets or whatever, what kind of stuff they have around.
Yeah.
It's going to be good, man.
And they also announced, kind of going with the same announcement, they also announced that this year's WrestleMania is a 2-night event, which they need to, I think every WrestleMania needs to be a 2-night event just to fit everything in. It doesn't make it, I don't know, to me, it doesn't make it feel as special in some ways, because like having a designated main event, I think used to mean something, but now these shows are so long that everybody is so tired by the main event time that the last few main events have not been that great because everybody's been so tired throughout it. And if you think about it, if WrestleMania 34 had been 2 nights and the first night ended by AJ and Shinsuke, that match would have been probably looked at a lot better than it's regarded as now. So I think 2 nights is probably the smartest way to go. Same
thing with Kofi and Bryan. Yeah. I mean, that match doesn't get overlooked from 35, but still, if that was 2 nights, I mean, but then if that one was 2 nights, then the triple threat match isn't as special as what it was. Yeah. So, but again, like you said, everybody was tired by the end of it, so it didn't mean as much anyway. So I think 2 nights is definitely the way to go. I think especially with this model of them, it's not as special, unfortunately, to be on the WrestleMania card anymore. So because they're trying to cram almost everybody on the card, you have to make it 2 nights, and you have to, it's changing. So you have to change with the times. And it also gives the women the opportunity to main event one night and the men to main event the other night. So that's really cool. Yeah. All that to say, Dallas Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast is got you in our sights. We'll put it that way.
After Mania and SummerSlam, I'm just missing the Rumble, and I've been to all 4 of the big 4. So
I hate you. That's true. You could be in the Survivor Series. That's true. All right. So Nashville is getting SummerSlam. More on that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks and months. That's a long way away, guys. 2022, but man, it's closer than we think it is. All right. SmackDown right after Crown Jewel. Last year, this was a disaster because of travel, but it turned out to be a great thing. Honestly.
I think it was the best SmackDown of the year.
It was absolutely awesome. The NXT takeover was great. This year, you could see a different format with SmackDown. They didn't start out with as much wrestling. The matches weren't, super long. They did some good things. They did enough. Are you okay with that? Like, would you have rather seen? Did it feel like the same show to you? I guess is my question.
It didn't, and I don't know. There's something about watching a wrestling show and the first wrestling match doesn't happen until like 45, 50 minutes in. I think that's kind of an issue because that's how Monday Night Raw can be at times when they open with like a 30-minute promo. It kind of, we're there obviously for some of the promos, but we're obviously there to see pro wrestling at the same time, watch wrestling matches. So I don't know. I think it give and take. I don't think my thing is I don't think they need to follow the same format every single episode. I think they need to do something unique every single episode, or whatever whatever the storylines call for to take place during the show. So how this one started off though with the whole Brock thing, I love when Brock gets suspended. Like he's been suspended like 50 times now, and each time it's fun. Like because what he's doing, you can believe he would actually do it in real life. So it's totally fine. And Roman and his promo and Paul Heyman and all that storyline. Obviously, we are nowhere near done with Roman and Brock. More than likely, Brock is out until Rumble. Wouldn't shock me if he showed up and won the Rumble. And then we get him and Roman at WrestleMania. It would be kind of funny if they swapped it around and did Roman or Brock versus Big E. But I don't think I think they're definitely building to Brock and Roman. But yeah, that opening segment was really fun. I just think you probably could have compacted it a little bit better.
Sure, you could have. I mean, it was like 3 segments before Brock came out at all. But dude, Roman's line about I beat Brock so bad that he's tweeting now. Oh my gosh, man. I laughed so hard. Man, I'm telling you what. I love this version of Roman Reigns. As much as I like this version of Brock Lesnar, I love this version of Roman Reigns.
It's so different. Both of them are so different than anything we've seen before. Brock without Paul, I thought would be boring. And I was completely wrong about that. And he is like, his charismatic side is coming out now. His creative side is coming out now. He's being forced to come out now, and it's really interesting. He can just grab a mic, say 3 things, and the crowd pops. And so it's amazing.
That's what I was getting ready to say, man. Is I think the reason that it's coming out so well and it's going over so well is because they're limiting it. You know, they're only giving us little nuggets and then go away. It's like,
he's like cutting 30-minute promos. Yeah.
Exactly. And he can't. Like, you don't want Brock Lesnar to cut 30-minute promos. Well, that's very true too. I mean, he's not going to be MJF, but you just don't know what he's going to say.
Oh, he don't give a crap about kids. We know that.
Well, that's true. Very true. But all that being said, like you said, like, this is nowhere near the end of Roman and Brock. I fully expect this to be the WrestleMania main event. And I was in attendance for the WrestleMania 34 main event, which I have deemed the worst main event in WrestleMania history. But I'll go ahead and go on record now, and I'll say I'm looking forward to WrestleMania 38, Roman and Brock headlining.
Question real quick. Rabbit hole time real quick.
Okay. That's what we do here on the Bite Bomb Wrestling Podcast.
And I'm going old school. I'm going old school with it too, so you should be proud of me.
Oh, Lord.
You think it's worse than Hogan, Yokozuna?
Oh, the whole Yoko Hogan Brett debacle, WrestleMania 9? Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. For the simple fact is, to me, Hogan wasn't the main event. The main event was Brett and Yoko.
Okay.
Hogan just happened to come out and screw everybody at the end.
He was good at that.
He was. He's fantastic at it. Yeah. So, no, I thought Brett and Yoko was fine. I thought Brett and Yoko had a really good chemistry, especially if you go watch their match the next year, WrestleMania 10. So good. Yoko was really, really good. But yes, that was a debacle. Apparently that Brett Yoko match got cut short. I guess Yoko was winded, and I don't want to say he was out of shape, but they did not wrestle the full match that they wanted to. Let's put it that way. But no, I do think Brock and Roman was worse just because, like, the crowd hated it.
Yeah.
Like, they could have cared less because they thought Roman was winning the whole time. If they would have gone into that match with some doubt, then I think that they could have helped lift that match up a little bit. But man, nobody cared.
The kicking out at 5 just didn't help either. No. Like that was even him bleeding didn't help. Like I get what you're saying.
And they did like 5 moves the whole time. So boring.
It's the same match as WrestleMania 31, just longer.
It really was. At least 30. At least 31. It felt better because it was the first time. You know.
Yeah.
That being said, man, let's
from one debacle to another.
Let's talk about okay, I'll let you go first then. Let's talk about the title exchange.
Yeah.
Charlotte and Becky. Go ahead. I'll let you go first because I'm going to have the opposite opinion. I can guarantee it.
Probably. The segment itself was just very awkward. And I have never been a big fan of the title swap. Okay. Like, I think you can find a better creative way to make everybody look strong and swap the titles and it'd be fine. But I think egos definitely got in the way here. And I'm not going to necessarily say one ego is bigger than the other, but one's a Flair, so you can decide which one's which. And like it was the way that they were going, because if you read everything that has been happening behind the scenes, like the plan was for Charlotte to give the belt to Sonya, and Sonya was going to give it to Becky, and then we get the picture of Becky 2 belts again, which is what the crowd was chanting. It's something that people have been wanting to see again, because that was like the height of Becky popularity was Becky 2 belts. And we only got it for like a month. I think she lost it like the next month after WrestleMania.
She lost it at Money in the Bank.
So like a month and a half, probably.
Yeah. Because Money in the Bank was sooner that year.
Yeah.
Because remember, she lost it to Charlotte and then Bayley cashed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think, I don't know. I think I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. Honestly, this is reading as Charlotte has 1 foot out the door. And I think Charlotte it could be a stunt for her to try to get out of a contract early, because some other reports have been saying she's been very difficult to work with here recently. And so I'm not going to just fully blame Charlotte, but I am basically fully blaming Charlotte for this whole debacle, because it should have just been an easy swap. Probably not the main event of the show, but just an easy swap that you could have done backstage. And it was a mess from the beginning.
I didn't mind it. I thought that, despite whatever rumors are happening, backstage heat, yada, 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 as far as the presentation of the segment, I'm obviously in the minority here, but I didn't hate it. Like, I thought Becky reaching for the title and Charlotte just dropping it, like, I didn't think that was bad, And then when Becky gets the title and she throws the other one at Charlotte, like, I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, let me provide you guys with some context. I read what happened before I watched it.
Yeah.
So if I had just been watching it, I would have scratched my head a little bit. Same thing with the whole Demon Roman Reigns rope breaking thing. Everybody that watched it live hated it. I read about it before I watched it, and I watched it and said, it's not that bad. Same thing here. So maybe I was just expecting the worst. I don't know. But I'm with you. Like, title exchanges are New Day and Street Profits. It made sense. 2 face tag teams, amicable switch, not a big deal, whatever. But this one, they tried to make it a big deal. And like, I don't know. Like you said, could have had a better way to do it.
Honestly, if Bianca would have beat Charlotte and like won the title on Monday, and you still have this triple threat, make it add Charlotte to the match, make it a fatal 4-way. That's fine, because now you don't know if Charlotte's winning, you don't know if Sasha's winning. Becky still has somewhat of a chance to win, and you can put the belt on Charlotte. You can put the belt on Sasha if you wanted to. You could find a way to put. You could do, instead of doing Bianca versus Charlotte, you could have done Becky versus Charlotte for title. Like, you have 2 different matches. One title, like the Raw Women's title, is on Monday Night Raw. The SmackDown Championship title is after the Saudi show, maybe after she defends it. If whoever wins the match has to defend it against Charlotte on next Friday. Becky still wins. She goes to SmackDown, maybe drops it there. I don't know. You could have found a more interesting way to do it.
I think what I would have done, something like this, is I would have said, okay, Becky loses at Saudi. That's what I would have said. Sasha wins it at Saudi somehow. She pins Bianca. Okay, cool. Done there. The Charlotte shows up on SmackDown the next night with the Raw Women's Championship, and Sonya's like, look, you're going to be on this show. You got to give that thing up. Well, then Becky comes down, and maybe Bianca comes down, and they both try to lay claim to the title. And Sonya just says, okay, match for the vacant title tonight between these two. Declare a champion on SmackDown just to have that match on SmackDown. And then no matter what, you don't know who's going to win because they're both on Raw anyway.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
that leaves Charlotte out, but who cares?
She's fine. She loses titles all the time and wins them back. So that's my whole thing, is like Charlotte was worried about looking weak. And it's like, you've won 13 million championships.
Yeah.
Like, you've lost it. That means you've lost it 12 times. So,
Exactly.
You're not going to look weak in this situation. And to be honest, you're not the biggest star in the company. Like Becky was supposed to be a heel from what she did to Bianca, and she's just, the crowd loves her. And so like, it's not going to work. It didn't work from the beginning.
No. And like, to piggyback on what you said about Charlotte, like, she's not the biggest star in the company. She might think, or some may think, because she's won 13 championships, that makes her the biggest star in the company.
Right.
Hate to tell y'all, Ric Flair won the title 16 times, but I guarantee you more people know who Hulk Hogan is.
Yeah. And it's like,
just saying,
Cena had 14, I think, at the time, 13, maybe 14. And like Punk was bigger than Cena. Like Punk and Daniel Bryan were bigger than Cena. We're both the face of the company, faces of their division. So the title reigns don't matter, because personally, I would rather have shorter numbers but longer reigns, because I think it means more. And I don't think that's necessarily the case with Charlotte. When Charlotte wins it, you're like, oh, how long until she drops it again? And then she wins it back. So it's just, to me, it reads as she's probably, especially after this situation and after what Andrade tweeted right after everything kind of happened, I think you could definitely read into maybe she has one foot out the door, ready to go somewhere else.
Well, yeah, you just mentioned long title reigns, short number of title reigns. AJ Styles, since he came into the WWE in 2016, has only had 2 world championship reigns. Yep. Both have been over a year long.
Yep.
You look at Shawn Michaels, he's only a 4-time champion. You look at Sting, he's only a 6-time champion. So
even Roman, like Roman's best title run has been this one, and he's held it for 420 something days.
Exactly.
So and like Punk had a WWE championship technically twice.
Right.
But like his long run with it is more memorable than most of Cena's runs that I can remember. Like that's the part that matters.
You look at a guy like Triple H. Triple H, and this might be like the one caveat to the argument. Triple H has had the world title 14 times. Okay. But to me, none of them feel like it's like hopscotch with the title, or hot potato, not hopscotch. What am I thinking? Hot potato with the title. It feels like his runs were significant, even though he had it 14 times.
Yeah. I would say that's the case, except probably for the last one with Roman at WrestleMania 32. When he won that one at the Rumble, you kind of knew they were heading to this direction.
Sure.
But most of the other ones, I would say you're absolutely right about that.
Yep. So rabbit hole, that was fun. That was a rabbit hole we didn't intentionally go down, but we did. So let's shift gears. Let's go to Monday Night Raw. Man, fatal 4-way ladder match in the main event to determine the number 1 contender. Like you talk about, we alluded to earlier, we're seeing some of the same matches on the season premieres of these shows. Kudos to them for pulling out a gimmick match in the main event of that kind of magnitude.
And it made sense. Like a ladder match with the contract in the air to determine the number 1 contender. Like it made sense. It wasn't just some random thing kind of thrown together.
Yep.
And it was 4 guys that when they announced that it was happening, you knew kind of instantly, okay, this is going to be a really good match. I mean, like Rey Mysterio is in his like older age for a wrestler, and is still better than most. Like is a good way to put it. Finn Balor is in the prime of his career right now. Kevin Owens is in the prime of his career right now. Seth Rollins has not had a bad match in a long, long, long time.
Since 2019.
I would say his one with Ray, the eye for an eye match.
The match itself was the
finish,
fine.
though.
The finish,
it's the finishes that get him with him. But I would say like Seth has been consistently killing it here recently. Obviously, him and Edge have been doing amazing stuff. And I love the fact that he was there, Edge wasn't there. Like after the Hell in a Cell match, I love that little fact. And he's just get thrown right into a ladder match, which was really interesting. Kevin Owens pulling a Goldberg before the match even began and headbutted the ladder and kind of busted himself open right there. And Kevin Owens in a ladder match is just special because he is going to do the craziest things.
And you don't expect it.
No, you don't expect. Well, you're getting to you're used to expecting it now, kind of.
Right.
But like he does things off of ladders, through ladders, like to other people, to himself. There's just like he knows he's going to get he knows there's going to be pain, and he's just like,
Sure.
hey, let's just do it anyway and just kind of go through with it. So
Exactly.
it was a great match, one of the best matches, TV matches of the year. Maybe the best one. It was really
Man,
good.
I feel like we keep saying that though. Mm-hmm. We keep saying, "Oh, this was the best TV match." Because WWE, kudos to them, man. Like, take AEW out of the picture because obviously we just got done talking about how they make a lot of their TV matches just feel super special. Kudos to WWE for doing that in 2021, man. Because they have really come out swinging with some good TV matches and not just main event guys. Like specifically in my head, I'm thinking Ricochet versus John Morrison from like right at the end of the Thunderdome era. My goodness, like they had a series of matches that were just ridiculous.
Or if you watch any Ricochet versus Ali match on main event,
right?
Like, I don't understand why these matches are happening on main event because they are some of the best matches in the company. Like they're absolutely amazing. But you're right. Like the match quality has not been an issue necessarily for WWE this year. Like match quality has been really up there. You've got guys like Roman who's at the top of his game, Seth and Edge at the top of their games. AJ is at the top of his game. Randy is like renewed now and is doing some fun stuff.
Balor's renewed now.
Balor's renewed. Kevin Owens is doing the same thing he's always been doing. Shinsuke feels special again.
Oh yeah.
Sami Zayn feels important. Like they're doing a lot of great stuff match quality wise. I think it's the creative side of some things that has obviously always been an issue here recently for WWE. And if they can ever just merge the two together, then you've definitely got gold in your hands.
Yep. What else from Monday Night Raw stood out to you? I know you mentioned earlier a lot of rematches that you saw, even though it was a season premiere. What else stood out like in a positive way to you? If anything?
No, there is. I'm just trying to remember what happened to 3-hour show. So I'm trying to run through the show
that's true. That's totally true.
Obviously the main event was really, really good. RK Bro versus the Dirty Dogs was fun. Randy is just absolutely killing it right now with Matt Riddle. Basically those two things have been really, really good. Zelina's promo was fine, but seeing Zelina versus Doudrop again was kind of
not fine.
It's the nicest way I could put it. Bearcat Keith Lee, I like the gimmick. I like him with this gimmick. I think it works well for him. Him versus Cedric Alexander. They kind of teased a little bit of Shelton thought about attacking him but didn't. If Bearcat Keith Lee joins the Hurt Business, that would be fantastic.
Boom.
That would be amazing. Let him. Damian Priest and I'm never going to call him T-Bar. Dominic Dijakovic had like a really fun match, and Damian Priest got new music, which that seems to be going around right now that everybody's getting kind of new music. And his Titantron was interesting.
I saw his so full disclosure, I watched Raw a little bit earlier, but I didn't have the sound on. I saw his Titantron and I was a little weirded out. How's the music?
The music's fine. The music is better than most of the new music that people are getting stuck with.
All right. I was a huge fan of his other music. So
yeah, I was too.
Okay.
It's not bad. It kind of fits. I don't want to say more with him, but it still fits him.
Okay.
And the kind of the logic behind the double Titantron of like half of it was red, half of it was like basically it was like half demon, half angel. Is because they said that he can like tap into both sides. So he can tap into his good side, but when he like has to unleash the demons in him, like he can do that. That's kind of what happened with him and Dijakovic.
Okay.
Which if they turn T-Bar into Dijakovic and let those two guys go at it for the U.S. title, then
sure,
it's going to be amazing. It's going to be absolutely amazing. But yeah, it felt fresh for the most part.
Sure.
Raw did, other than, you still had your Carmelo versus Liv Morgan's 19,000th match that Liv Morgan can't win. And so there's some stuff that's still being repeated, but especially the main event, everything kind of felt fresh.
Good. Speaking of feeling fresh, NXT 2.0, we talked about Halloween Havoc this week, and oh my gosh, man. Full disclosure, I did not watch the end of NXT. I know we have 1, 2, 3. Do we have 4 title changes?
We only have 3.
We do not have 4 title changes?
Nope.
What?
Tommaso Ciampa retained the NXT championship in the main event against Braun Breaker. Yep.
What?
Yep. That was kind of shocking too, because wasn't really paying attention to it because it was full disclosure, it was while we were recording this. And,
sure.
I kind of looked over and saw his hand being raised for the NXT championship, so I don't necessarily know how it finished. I just know that he won the NXT or he retained the NXT championship. So that kind of
that's the one. That's the one slam dunk that I thought was going to happen, and wow. So all that being said, Mandy Rose is the new NXT Women's Champion. Her cohorts in crime, Toxic Attraction, are the new NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. So Toxic Attraction has all the gold, and then Imperium, new tag team champions, finally taking the titles off of MSK. Dakota Kai returns. Man, what a night of Halloween Havoc. It's a lot of stuff, man. Just a lot.
Yeah, you can definitely tell they are switching things up on NXT. Not necessarily that's a bad thing. It's hit or miss at times. I had actually come to terms with Braun Breaker being the NXT champion. I was kind of fine with it because he's kind of proven himself over the last couple of weeks. But I mean, honestly, it would not shock me if he lost this and just ends up going straight to the main roster like right away. That would not shock me in the slightest if they did that. I'm fine with Toxic Attraction kind of holding all the gold. I thought Raquel's reign had been kind of going stale.
Oh, for sure.
Since she had turned face, because Dakota really should have been the one to beat her. But that didn't happen. MSK, I don't know if they were cheered or booed, by the way, but I feel bad for them because they obviously have not been the most loved tag team in NXT. But they had a really great reign. I thought they had a really strong reign.
Really did.
But I'm excited to see Imperium with that, especially if that means maybe we get Ciampa versus Walter for the NXT championship, because that would be money. And then Roderick Strong retained in his open challenge. He retained the cruiserweight. It's really weird that since Undisputed Era has broken up, 3 of the 4 have done really great stuff. And the 4th is the one that was being pushed the most in Kyle O'Reilly that has not done a whole lot. Like Adam Cole is going to be fine no matter where he wins. Roddy is doing some of his best stuff right now with the Diamond Mine. And then you've got Bobby Fish on AEW that is getting ready to face CM Punk. He is doing some really great stuff right now too. And Kyle O'Reilly's just kind of nowhere to be found. So it's very interesting that that's kind of how the cards have fallen.
If they push Kyle O'Reilly to the main roster, it might be worse. It might be worse than Matt Riddle for me.
Really?
Yes. O'Reilly just kind of gets on my nerves, and I can tolerate him in NXT, but if you bring him to the main roster, I just don't. He's fine in the ring. He's fine, but
it's really weird because he went on like a solos run in Ring of Honor that was amazing. Like it was absolutely amazing. Him and Adam Cole had like a really big feud. I think it was Cole's last feud before they all left. It was their last feud before they left. Mm-hmm. And it was absolutely amazing seeing both of those guys. So it's weird that like he has not done that in NXT. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to say maybe it's like the NXT creative has kind of trying to take too much control over him and not letting him kind of be himself. Because that kind of seems like it could be the case, but it's just weird that he's been the one that has struggled the most since Undisputed Era has broken up.
Yeah, I would have 100% pinned that on Bobby Fish just because of the way the cards were.
And his injury, he gets injured a lot, and
exactly. Yeah. But daggum, he's over in AEW. He's about to face CM Punk. So good grief.
So he faced Bryan Danielson, and he's doing.
He's
honestly, like, I think because he's had more marquee matches than Adam Cole has right now. So like he's doing pretty good stuff right now.
Yeah. And we didn't even really talk about Adam Cole. Anxious to see what they do with him coming up, especially with Full Gear coming up. But that being said, man, let's wrap up this edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We apologize for going long. We just found some rabbit holes to go down and we had to go down them. So, but before we wrap up, we always have to hand out our high spots and turd sandwiches, the highs and the lows this week in the wrestling business. And I will start with my turd sandwich. We mentioned it earlier, and it is seeing Carmelo versus Liv Morgan for the zillionth time and not seeing a different result and not knowing why this match is continuing to happen. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Carmella is honestly one of my favorite women's wrestlers. That's definitely, I'm in the minority, definitely an unpopular opinion. I'm a big fan of Mella, always have been. But to continue to see this, I'm not a fan. But before we go any further, before I get to you, I want to make sure to shout out and congratulate Mella and Corey Graves on their engagement. Congrats to those two. I'm a huge fan of Corey Graves After the Bell podcast. Mella was actually on it a couple of weeks ago. Y'all, it's an underrated episode. It's worth the listen. I'm telling you, it really is. So that's my 2 cents. Go ahead. Turd sandwich of the week. What you got?
It's got to be the main event of SmackDown. It really does. It was just rough from the very beginning, and it did not flow well. And it was just it felt pointless. And I think that for your main event of your show after having a really strong pay-per-view, it's got to be really important. And it felt very flat and pointless. And even when Sasha came out to attack Charlotte, it was like, I don't really care about this anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of part of it.
Yeah, Sasha coming out definitely didn't have the pop that they wanted it to, for sure. My high spot of the week, the best thing that I think that happened in the wrestling business, not counting Crown Jewel, because we already did our review show on that, because obviously I would say Edge and Seth Rollins, but we already did our review show on that. So scratch that. My high spot, honestly, is the fact that we had a meaningful gimmick main event match on Raw. Like, for all of you just mentioned the main event on SmackDown, which is supposed to be right now the premier show. Mm-hmm. For all of the meaningless main events that we might get on a show, for them to not only have a fatal 4-way match to determine the number 1 contender, but put some ladders in it and put this talent in it, it takes the cake for me. Yeah. I'm there.
I definitely agree. Mine's mine was going to be the ladder match since you took my spot. I'm going to actually put a person in here instead of like anything else. I'm going to put Seth here. Like Seth throughout in the entire thing of Monday Night Raw, from his opening promo to his reaction to it being stuck in a ladder match to his reaction when Kevin Owens came out and was talking about, because it was in Houston and that's where he won, I think, his first Intercontinental Championship as well as the Universal Championship. Where he pinned Seth, and he was like, your head is where Big E's feet were, and your feet were where Ray was, and Seth just kind of snapped and attacked him, and Seth's reaction to everything, just kind of going through the night, was really great. Also, Kevin Owens called him Cruella de Vil in the outfit that he was wearing, and it was spot on. It was perfect. But definitely, I think Seth Rollins, since his last title run, has not had a lot of praise about him, and I think he absolutely deserves it, especially right now. He is doing some of the best stuff he has done. Yep. He's definitely at the top of his game right now, so I'm putting Seth here. And
Kevin Owens is probably the most underrated promo guy in the business.
He's probably the most underrated guy in WWE right now.
He's so good. He's so good. And for those of you who might be down on Seth Rollins or have been down on Seth Rollins, just take an appreciation for his stuff that he did with Edge, his stuff he did Monday night, but better yet, subscribe to the Peacock Network. Go watch the Broken Skull Sessions interview with him and Stone Cold Steve Austin. You will gain a new respect for that man. I promise.
Especially since he had the same reaction we all had to the infamous Hell in a Cell match. So
right. Exactly. All right, man. Let's put a bow on this week's episode. What a fun time that we had. Make sure that you subscribe to us on social media at PBW Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to Bodyslam.net's YouTube channel. That's where you find the video version of our podcast. Make sure you're following SportsWire Radio That way that you'll know when our shows air, specifically premieres on Mondays and Wednesdays. And coming up this Friday on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel, we'll throw you a Flashback Friday episode. Full disclosure, haven't decided which one that's going to be yet, but we will promote that on social media. Make sure that you check that out, especially if you are new to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast family. So that's coming up on Friday. This coming Monday, Andy, I am so pumped for all of our listeners and viewers to check out what's coming up this Monday. It is our first interview of season 3, and it is with two guys that you may not know about, but you're going to learn about soon enough. Ladies and gentlemen, the fastest rising, hottest tag team in the industry right now, Hunter Knott and Rosario Grillo, TSF. If you don't know what TSF stands for, just listen to the podcast. You'll find out. But Andy and I had a blast interviewing these guys. Andy, I can't put this interview over enough. It's exactly what everybody wants it to be. It's incredible. I highly recommend everybody check it out.
After listening to it and kind of after being a part of it, but also for like our viewers after listening to it, if these two guys aren't like in your top 10 favorite tag teams right now, then there's something wrong with you, not with us. So I think that's definitely part of it, because just talking with them and going back and watching some of their matches and stuff, they're the real deal. And so they've got a lifelong fan in me from this point on. And I'm even talking about buying merch and everything else. So I'm hooked. So definitely give it a listen. Check them out. Go check them out on AEW Dark and Elevation and CCW and some other stuff, man. They do some great stuff.
And if you guys listen to our podcast regularly and you respect our wrestling opinions, guess what? We're putting over these guys as one of the best teams out right now. They've only been in the business for 7 months.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. So if that doesn't pull you in and that doesn't intrigue you to listen to this, I don't know what will, man. But I'm driving you to bodyslam.net's YouTube channel. You want to watch us do this interview, because some of the reactions that we get with those guys, it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Go check it out. It's coming out this coming Monday on bodyslam.net's YouTube channel.
Yep. It's obviously it's my first interview I've ever done, so it's my favorite right now. But it's one of my favorite interviews, just kind of like going back and forth and talking. And obviously we don't just talk about pro wrestling all the time. We talk about life and movies and toys and everything else. So
yes.
If all that stuff is up your alley, you just get to know the guys a lot better and more personal. And it's hard not to like them after watching it. I can guarantee
it is a good time for sure. You hit the nail on the head. So make sure you subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast and on bodyslam.net's YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. He is at Andy_PBWP. I am at Chris Belcher 24. The show is at PBW Podcast. Buy yourself a Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast t-shirt over at ProWrestlingTees.com. Make sure you support the show that way. Again, got new episodes coming at you Friday, Monday, and then next Wednesday and next Friday. And a lot of content coming their way, man. They don't want to miss what we've got coming. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's as the wrestling world gets busier, we get busier, but it's all fun and we're enjoying every second of it. So
that's exactly right.
Glad to be on the ride.
And make sure you all come along, stick on the ride with us. You don't want to miss stuff that's coming up. For Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you so much for checking out the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.